Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly break down why Barcelona dropped points at Real Sociedad to give Real Madrid a chance to go top of La Liga ahead of El Clasico. But before we do that, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel on our road to 2K subscribers. So what we have here is 4-3-3 against 4-1-4-1. And what often happens here is that when we have two sides playing nearly identical systems, it does give the chance of us seeing a dead rubber. What ended up happening here, though, was the fact that Barcelona dropping off into two banks of four without the ball did give Real Sociedad chances, and they did a good job of bypassing Barcelona's midfield and causing them problems by pressing high. When we do look at it, it's Messi and Suarez up front. We do see Griezmann and Rakitic shifting out into those narrow, wider roles, and their job is to close down the fullbacks pushing forward. But the big issue that Barcelona have here is that they want to stay in that 3v3 in midfield, but we did see Sociedad being able to bypass them. And if that wasn't the case, when Barcelona did stay compact on the rare occasions in two banks of four, it does leave Guevara with space to play balls out into wider areas. And it does take a lot of the Griezmann and Rakitic to shift out into those wider roles. One of Sociedad's ploys throughout the game was to get Rakitic sucked into that midfield battle, have Oyarzabal push out into narrow position to pull out Sergio Roberto, and then have Nacho Monreal play on the overlap, and we'll get to that in a second. So that was one way that they were going about things, but this was more about Barca and their poor shape and the fact that they simply can't defend with 8 men if they want to win trophies this season. Suarez and Messi should be stepping out to Zubeldia and Diego Llorente, but they hardly closed them down quick enough, and what we often saw in the earlier stages was that Suarez and Messi were getting in front of the center backs. They had Rakitic and they had Griezmann pushing out into those wider areas, and we would see Busquets for the most part shifting out into Guevara to ensure that he can't get on the ball. With that being said, what often happens is that it would be Rakitic against Merino and De Jong against Odegaard. So if the ball is being shifted out into the path of Monreal, we would see Rakitic shift over, and what they did well here was that Busquets would move into the path of Merino, and we would have De Jong step out into the path of Guevara, which often meant that you would want Griezmann to tuck in, to stick with Odegaard, and if the ball gets shifted out to the opposite flank, then they move across the pitch in that manner as well. So what you end up seeing here is that, yes, you do have the midfield battle set, but because there was a lack of pressing from the front with Barcelona, the center backs were able to get on the ball, and for the most part, Busquets couldn't always get out to Guevara. So if he can't always get out to Guevara, you need Messi or Suarez to drop off, and they weren't doing that. So Guevara and the center backs, for the most part, often had free passes to play out of the back, and they were able to get teammates involved and pull Barcelona's players out of position. The only positive thing for Barcelona in that first half was the fact that they did get Messi on the ball, but the problem was he wasn't creating from attacking zones. He wasn't getting into goal scoring positions. He was dribbling past markers, but not doing enough in the attacking phase. But with him drifting in central, Sergio Roberto did get forward, but didn't offer much of a threat. And frankly, this was about Sociedad, because when Sociedad didn't have the ball, they pressed high. When you really look at it, in a 4-1-4-1, it's very simple, because what ends up happening there is that you have Isak stepping out to a center back, and when he steps out to the center back, the spare center back is pushed out to buy the shuttler. So let's say he moved out to Piqué, we often saw Odegaard step out to Lenglet and vice versa. If Isak did move into the path of Lenglet, you'd want Merino to step out into the path of Piqué, and Guevara would pick up their spare man. So what we would often see is Isak stepping out into the path of Lenglet, and we'd have Odegaard move into Busquets, who dropped off deeper to try and create a 3v2. That didn't bother Real Sociedad, because what we ended up seeing there was we would have Porto pressing Lenglet and blocking out the passing lane into Jordi Alba, and Guevara would step into Odegaard's man, and that was De Jong. What ends up happening there is that if you see the ball being clipped over Porto into the path of Jordi Alba, then we'd see Zaldua step out into the path of Alba to close him down quickly, and Zubeldia would push into the path of Griezmann to close him down. That's how they ignited the press from the front. Barcelona struggled to play out of that press for large spells of that first half, and frankly, with Sociedad pressing so high, Barca never looked to play long over the top because Messi and Suarez don't have the speed to break in behind to get into goal scoring positions, and that's why they never did look to go long in those scenarios, and that's why Barcelona struggled to create chances in the first half. So when you look at how Sociedad is pressing from the front, you also have to look to the fact that in attacking zones, like I said, Oyarzabal is looking to cut across Sergio Roberto so Monreal could push forward, and often Rakitic or De Jong, because he did shift over on the rare occasion, couldn't get out to close him down. Griezmann did a good job against Zaldua, who often didn't look to push forward. Isak was dropping off deeper, trying to pull out center backs. Guevara had space, and Odegaard was the key man in multiple passing sequences because he was able to receive the ball between the lines when Barcelona's midfield did step out of position, and he would shift out into the right-hand zone, more so towards the channel, because he knew De Jong wouldn't step out to close him down there, and neither would Rakitic, and that's where his passing really became key as he tried to retain possession and find pockets of space to exploit when Barcelona's shape was pulled out of position. So now we're going to look at a few examples to see how Real Sociedad exploited Barcelona's midfield and defense. And the first one does see Odegaard shift to the right channel to receive the ball, and with De Jong ahead of him and Busquets stepping a bit higher, what Odegaard is able to do is he splits those two Barcelona midfielders to find Isak dropping off a bit deeper to receive the ball. Isak receives the ball between the lines, and while he does that, we see Porto making a run in between Lenglet and Piqué, and Oyarzabal making a run in between Piqué and Sergio Roberto. We have Rakitic tucked in with Merino, and what ends up happening here is that Isak skips away from Lenglet, and Monreal now is able to make that overlapping run because Rakitic has shifted over and Messi is not tracking back. So when he slides that ball out into the path of Monreal, he does deliver a good cross into the box, but Piqué does clear his lines. But there is one example where we see Real Sociedad exploiting Barcelona's shape and getting Monreal to break forward because there's no one tracking the runs because Rakitic is sucked into the midfield battle. Minutes later, we witness Barcelona's press being bypassed, and it starts with Griezmann stepping to Zaldua. And when he steps to Zaldua, Zaldua locates Guevara free in midfield, so he squares the ball to Guevara, and before Busquets could step to him, Guevara chips the ball over Busquets into the path of Merino ahead of De Jong, who did swap sides with Rakitic. De Jong closes slowly, and Merino's able to chest the ball down and split De Jong and Rakitic to find Odegaard shifting out into that right channel once again. When Odegaard shifts out into that right channel, it does pull out Jordi Alba, and we do see runs of Porto running across Lenglet. We end up having Isak running off Piqué, and then we also see Oyarzabal ahead of a narrow Sergio Roberto. And what we see is Odegaard split Rakitic and Alba to find Merino running off Rakitic, and Merino ends up receiving the ball in midfield, and he skips past Lenglet and slides the ball out to Oyarzabal ahead of Sergio Roberto. Again, with no De Jong or Messi tracking back, we have Monreal making the overlapping run to pull out Roberto because he is wary of that run in the wider area, and it allows Oyarzabal to fire a shot that does go over the net, but once again, it's the overlapping run. It's Barcelona's poor pressing, and we see midfield runners getting beyond that press to place Real Sociedad into some key areas. Shortly after that, we see more great work from Sociedad to pull out Barcelona. It's Zubeldia sliding the ball out to Zaldua, which pulls out Griezmann, and Zaldua plays the ball back to Zubeldia, Zubeldia, and that does see Messi step towards him and Suarez looking to peel and press Diego Llorente. But what Messi doesn't do is he doesn't block off the passing lane into Guevara, and Zubeldia is able to play the ball into the path of Guevara, which does offset Busquets. So Busquets does look to step to Guevara, so he plays the pass into Odegaard, and Odegaard does pull out De Jong, and De Jong plays the ball back into the path of Guevara. And when Guevara gets the ball, that does pull out Rakitic, but now Rakitic and Busquets are pulled out of position, and it leaves Merino free in midfield for those two to be split. And when he does receive the ball, he ends up sliding it out into the path of Oyarzabal, making a run across Sergio Roberto once again. And we do have Monreal making another overlapping run before Busquets can shift over. But Oyarzabal's cross for Porto looking to run across Alba is overhit, and Alba's able to shield it out. But once again, Barcelona's pressing just not good enough. The front two did close down well, but Messi doesn't block off that pass. Rakitic and Busquets a bit too slow out to Guevara, and no one picking up Merino when both of them did look to close down Real Sociedad's deep-lying midfielder. So when we look to one final example, it does highlight the issues that Barcelona have in full. What ends up happening is Zubeldia split Messi and Suarez, not pressing any Real Sociedad center back, and it falls to Guevara, and Guevara is able to split Rakitic and Busquets to find Odegaard floating between the lines. Odegaard receives the ball and he's able to run at the back four, and he slides the ball out into the path of Porto. And what ends up happening there is Zaldua makes the overlapping run to pull Alba away from Porto, and Porto clips the ball to the far post. We have Isak making a run in between Sergio Roberto and Piqué, and it falls into the path of Oyarzabal, but he's unable to guide his effort on goal, and Ter Stegen was able to punch it away. So although Real Sociedad were able to get in behind Barcelona's midfield and defense on several occasions, their opener came early in the first half from the spot kick. However, Barcelona did create chances, although they were a handful, and it didn't stem from long spells of possession where they're able to bypass Real Sociedad's backline. What we ended up seeing here was that they tried to play long over the top on a few occasions. We saw Messi playing a long ball to Griezmann. We had Rakitic diagonal out into Sergio Roberto, and we saw Busquets locate Jordi Alba. But when those Barcelona players received the ball in behind Sociedad's backline, their pullbacks did not connect with their teammates, and frankly, Barcelona were getting into good zones, but just not being able to find that final pass. When we do look to their best chances in that first half, one stemmed from a Diego Llorente mistake, and the other stemmed from a simple long ball over the top. And again, it was a mistake that offsetted the break for Barcelona to get beyond Real Sociedad's high press. So when we look to the first example, what we see is Real Sociedad playing out from the back and Suarez and Messi pressing high, and Guevara is able to drop off deep to receive the ball from the keeper as Messi is pulled out of position. With De Jong stepping, Guevara is able to play a quick 1-2 with Odegaard and receive the ball back, and Guevara tries to split De Jong and Busquets to find Odegaard once again, but Lenglet does slide across to win the ball back, and it falls to Griezmann, who quickly plays the ball into Messi, who drops off ahead of Zubeldia to play the ball back to Griezmann, and Griezmann tries to fizz the pass into Luis Suarez, but Diego Llorente does clear that pass, but he clears it into the path of Griezmann, who wins the header over him, and he nods the ball into the path of Suarez free on goal, but Suarez opts to fire a shot from distance on goal that is pushed away, but Rakitic's rebound from a poor angle that did look like more of a cross was cleared by Diego Llorente to clear their lines. When we look to Barcelona's equalizer, it's even simpler, and what we end up seeing is Alba throwing the ball back into Lenglet, and he clears the ball instantly into the path of Luis Suarez, dropping off, but Suarez does pull out of his challenge, but Diego Llorente mistimes his header, and it allows Barcelona to break in a 3v2, which does see Messi, Suarez, and Griezmann attack Monreal and Zubeldia. So with Griezmann peeling off to the left and Messi peeling off to the right outside of Monreal, Suarez slides the ball into the path of Griezmann, who breaks free on goal, and he's able to chip the keeper to ensure that Barcelona go into halftime level 1-1. So when we break down that first half as a whole, Real Sociedad was the better side strictly based off their defensive shape. They pressed high and they ensured that Barcelona were unable to play out of the back, and they forced Barcelona to create their better chances from simple long long balls over the top where they made defensive mistakes. For Barcelona, they're unable to sustain that high pressure for 90 minutes, let alone 45. And frankly, this is where they were exploited. Messi and Suarez weren't pressing. The center backs and Guevara were able to play passes out of the back. They didn't have anyone to track Monreal when Rakitic was sucked into that midfield battle. And frankly, Barcelona couldn't cope with Odegaard, who was finding space between the lines to get on the ball and simply combining with his midfield trio to ensure that they bypassed Barcelona's midfield, stepping slow to the ball. So when we look to the start of the second half, Sociedad's pressing did decrease and Barcelona were able to exert their dominance. They were able to go ahead within the opening 5 minutes, and it was from Route 1 football once again. We did see Guevara win a challenge in midfield, and he nodded the ball into the path of Isak around the halfway mark, but Piqué was able to win back the ball following his poor touch and poke the ball beyond Odegaard into the path of Griezmann dropping off, and Griezmann poked the ball across Mourinho into Busquets, who was free in a deeper zone, and he clipped the ball over Diego Llorente for Lionel Messi running in behind him, and Messi was able to square the ball beyond Zubeldia and the Sociedad keeper into Luis Suarez, who tapped his effort in. Shortly after that, Barcelona should have increased their lead, and it was Busquets dropping the ball off to Lenglet, and before Odegaard can step, he did locate Griezmann dropping off as Zaldua and making a run in between the right back and the right center back to break free on goal, to bring down Lenglet's long ball with his first touch and take an additional 2 touches into left half space, but his shot was denied by the Sociedad keeper. Minutes later, it was Busquets once again as Sociedad dropped off into their 4-5-1, and Busquets with time on the ball located the run of Jordi Alba running off Porto, because Griezmann did make a narrow run to pull out Zaldua, and what ends up happening there is that Busquets locates Jordi Alba making that run beyond Porto to receive the ball. Zaldua is forced to step to Alba. Griezmann runs off Zaldua, which pulls out Zubeldia, and Alba locates Messi trying to make a run into the 6-yard box to direct his cross into the net, but Diego Llorente does come across to clear the ball out for a corner kick that nearly saw Piqué tower in off the far post to nod his effort past the keeper, but it was cleared off the line. Why Barcelona was so successful in that second half, or to start that second half, was simply based off the fact that Sociedad couldn't maintain their pressing levels from that first half. They dropped off deeper, no one was getting to Busquets, and he was able to dictate the game from deep, switching the ball out into wider positions, finding Messi and Rakitic a bit higher, and getting the fullbacks involved. That led to Sociedad making a tactical change, bringing on Januzaj, and Januzaj moved to the right-hand side for Porto, and within minutes he was involved in Sociedad's equalizer. So when we look to Sociedad's equalizer, once again it highlights the issues that Barcelona faced in that opening half. It's Zaldua on the ball and Griezmann doesn't get tight to him, and Zaldua is able to play a pass between Busquets and De Jong because Odegaard makes a run to try and pull out a marker in that position, but he ends up leaving the ball, and the pass does split those two midfielders and falls into the path of Januzaj ahead of Lenglet in a narrow position. Januzaj is able to spin off a Lenglet before he is taken down, but when he's taken down, he slides the ball out into Oyarzabal. He's able to take on Sergio Roberto, and what we end up seeing there is the overlapping run of Nacho Monreal, who runs off Rakitic in behind Roberto to receive the ball in that left half space, and he delivers a cross into the box that should be cleared by Ter Stegen, but Ter Stegen pushes the ball into the path of Isak, who's able to tap in the ball from point blank range. Willian Jose did come on, and frankly, he should have put Sociedad back ahead, but besides that, nothing really happened after that equalizing goal. So when you break down that game as a whole, Sociedad's tactical approach was much more successful. They pressed high and stopped Barcelona from playing out of the back. They found space between the lines, and their overlapping run, specifically from Monreal, caused Barcelona's narrow 4-4-2 out of possession so many problems. However, once again, Barcelona were able to rely on the individual brilliance of their front three and some individual mistakes from Real Sociedad's backline. They were the better side at the start of the second half because Sociedad's pressure did decrease and Busquets was able to take over the game, combined with the fact that they were able to play long balls over the top for the front three to get onto. But the tactical change did give Sociedad some life. They were able to equalize, and frankly, Willian Jose should have won the game for Sociedad. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think Real Sociedad can finish in the top four? And what about Barcelona? How big is this week's Clásico? And do you think if they lose that, then Valverde will be in some trouble? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And once again, if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.